A good place to start is at the beginning, and for me, it's here, Peyto Lake in the Canadian Rockies. It proved to be, over my lifetime, a gateway for the inner man to become the outer man. And in 1996, I shook hands with eternity here. Over to the west, in this area, I saw three images in the sky. They were visions. I turned away, rubbing my eyes, telling myself they weren't there, but every time I looked, I still saw them. They were formed with a kind of reddish electricity. The first image I saw was a cup, like a grail. I knew this symbolized the original great dreamer's love. It was the magic hidden in the hearts of all men. Then this red energy became a cross, the oldest symbol for the intersection of spiritual timelessness and physical time. Finally, it created a pyramid of greater knowing so that I would understand this for all time, till the end of time. My name is Dante, and this film follows my earth walk and where that journey has taken me, as I learned that he who dances with ghosts really dances with himself. At the end of every road is a path. Art always has a destination unknown to its creator. In 1986, I donated 10,000 posters to the Make-A-Wish Foundation, which made $60,000, helping to fund the last wishes of many dying children. But what goes around comes around, and my own son of spirit, Sean, was diagnosed with a terminal illness. He was part Cherokee Indian and died in 1991. I did a book, Echoes of Wolves, about him, trying to give his life some simple justice, again donating 5,000 copies to Make-A-Wish. It made $40,000 in the first year and has been read worldwide for the last 14 years. I did another book, Share, which I donated to various organizations caring for the terminally ill at the height of the AIDS crisis. Later, I donated 5,000 Last Supper posters of Dr. King and Malcolm X to the Sickle Cell Disease Association to help fund medical research. This project also involved me in working with gangs during the Blood and Crips wars. In 2000, I donated $10,000 worth of T-shirts to the Native American Maori Recruitment Project. The money raised went to financially aid Indian families with terminally ill children. I continued donating T-shirts, prints, and cards to schools and Native cultural centers like the St. Labre and Red Cloud Indian schools. I worked on a book called Spirit's Trail for 7 years, finally donating thousands of CD books to Native schools across the United States and Canada in 2003. I've spent the last 3 years on the road giving the Spirit's Trail workshop in schools and prisons. Although my work with charities over the last 20 years has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, only keeping them honest proved to be frustrating at times. But it was never about the money for me. I never took a dime, and I'm not independently wealthy, and I never had any funding. It was about something deeper, what the Lakota tribe call the Shantayishta, the eye of the heart, which always sees what the eyes in our head turn away from. This is part of the experience I'll be sharing today at a place I call the Heartbreak Hotel. This is Crossroads, the men's prison at Shelby, Montana, where I'll be giving a workshop. The standing joke about my work in prisons is that I'm always looking for a way in while everyone's looking for a way out. I always remind myself of what Sitting Bull said before going inside.
If a man loses anything and goes back, and looks carefully, he will find it, Sitting Bull and Papa.
This all starts in the graveyard, and it's sure enough going to end in the graveyard. I speak to the men and later women about the contradictions of life I saw growing up. Schools that taught cooperation while encouraging ruthless competition for best grades. Church had its own mixed messages. Preaching salvation couldn't be bought while passing around the collection plate. Later, in Vietnam, I saw Buddhist monks burn themselves to death to protest war, while army chaplains blessed us to go out and kill. America's anti-war protesters still paid taxes, which bought the bullets I used in my rifle in Vietnam to take lives. My own near-death experience, years later, of reaching the light and returning, and the resulting shift in reality are all things I know to be true because I've lived and died for them, and this is what I share with the inmates. I devote part of the workshop to spiritual dreaming, which has been practiced worldwide since the dawn of man and remains at the heart of knowing for Indian people's strength and guidance. Dreams are not purely illusions of make-believe, but an altered state of knowing the language of spirit. Like the Comanche chief Quanah said, whites go into their church to talk about Jesus. Indians go into their teepee to talk to Jesus. I teach the prisoners how to wake up in dreams and direct the experience and pierce the heart of darkness in nightmares. Sometimes half the attending workshops inmates cannot read, but they do know they own their lives, and I'm not trying to sell them anything. A personal journey is just that, and one size does not fit all faiths. The Lakota's white buffalo calf woman speaks of such a journey.
Every step is like a prayer. The power of the pure soul walks with you. It is a seed planted at your center which in time grows into your heart. White buffalo calf woman.
America has more prisoners than any other country. Most correctional facilities have less than 1% budgeted for education. 2 months after my workshop, violence erupted at Crossroads Prison, in part due to the overcrowded conditions there. More prisoners mean bigger profits for the private company that runs it, the Correctional Corporation of America. It saddens me because there are really good people on the staff there and a lot of men in red jumpsuits who honestly want to change their lives, which has nothing to do with the stock market making a fortune off their misfortune. However, the money remains in return business, not rehabilitation. Sometimes it's like trying to go up Mount Everest on roller skates. I ended up subsidizing the multi-million-dollar Correctional Corporation of America by donating a $29 DVD player to Crossroads Prison for their educational programs. In December, Crips founder Stan Tookie Williams was executed in California. His 10 years of work with children's books against the violent gang life counted for nothing in the end. He was no choir boy, so people asked me why I'd communicated with him. I said, if I did the same things today that I got medals for in Vietnam, I'd be in a cell next to him on death row. There's no truth in killing. Nothing ever evens out. It's empty, even when the state does it. It was ironic that Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, who made millions starring in violent movies, decided Tookie's fate in the end. A tree of ill will bears no fruit, only a harvest of death. Promises are light. We know people by the weight of their deeds. Truth and justice remain twins of different wombs in the American story.
When the buffalo went away, the hearts of my people fell to the ground, and they could not lift them again. After this, nothing happened. Chief Planiku, Crow.
By the late 1800s, a way of life was fast disappearing for the Plains Indians, who were starving to death due to the United States government's policy of exterminating the buffalo and not honoring any of the over 200 peace and land treaties they made with Native people. This came to a head at a place called the Little Bighorn. General Custer's Last Stand is really about the Native Americans' final statement on genocide. I'm at the Little Bighorn battlefield. This is a place of immense sadness and foolishness. Back up on that hill there, on June 25th, 1876, about 217 white men in blue uniforms left this world to wonder if they ever had listened to their hearts in it in the next world. So why have I come here? I have a deep connection to this place. Because when I was in Vietnam on a task force, I was with the 1st to the 7th Cavalry, 3rd Brigade B Troop. That was Custer's old outfit. And in a place called the Drang Valley, the Cav was almost annihilated. If you compare the two battles, although 89 years apart, they're eerily identical. How could this be? Well, the past isn't dead. The past isn't even past. We wake up to the past every day. The dying, they're dead, but they're dying to talk to us. And you cannot threaten the dead with death. Only eternity. And one good dream, that's worth the weight of eternity. The past, it's really like a ghost that walks silently behind all of us, waiting for the change that'll set it free. When the Buddhists talk about reincarnation, they stress that it's not about a change of body, but a change of heart. This is a hard place. Change really doesn't come to you, and you can't seek change either. You become the change. That changes things. The Cherokee say we can only be what we give ourselves the power to be. You can't blame governments or armies. The problem is in the mirror. 27,000 people will starve to death today, and 500 children will be killed in a war today. Why? Because we allow it. No other reason. The Blackfeet say life is not separate from death. It only looks that way. Time will pass into memory and become light. We must think about the shadow we leave on the earth, like these grave markers. The life we live is always equal to the life we didn't, and how we live our life is our message to the world. Part of you dies in a war, but is never buried. You become a living ghost. This can open a doorway to deeper understanding or seal your fate. Every now and then, someone will get drunk in a bar and talk about the 58,000 brothers that went down in Vietnam. But nobody talks about the 60,000 Vietnam vets who have committed suicide since the war's end. I'm going to read a quote from a Cree chief named Poundmaker. The Canadian Indians, they lost everything they had. This is what Poundmaker said. It would be easier just to fold our hands and not make this fight, to say that one man can do nothing. I grow afraid when I see people thinking and acting like this. We all know the story of the man who sat beside the trail too long, and the grass grew over it, and he could not find his way back. We cannot forget what happened. We cannot go back, and we cannot just sit by the side of the trail. That's the message. This is Last Fight, a guts and glory painting that hung in 150,000 saloons, painted by Cassidy Adams, an Irish immigrant who fought in the Civil War. He sold the rights to the Anheuser-Busch Beer Company, then committed suicide. Interestingly, there's evidence that soldiers killed themselves here to avoid capture and being tortured to death. The reality is, any soldier who is freezing to death will burn his country's flag to keep warm. Graveyards have a quiet, reflective quality to them, but this is what it looked like in 1879. You can make out the rotting bones of the 7th Cav's horses and a cross that reads "Unknown" and a soldier's boot. More has been written about this battle of what people think happened than anyone actually knows, but they kept digging up skeletons of dead soldiers until 1985. This one they found in 1958. In Sitting Bull's great vision before this battle, in which he saw a victory for the Indian people, the spirits had told him the soldiers would be killed because they had no ears for the cries of the Indians. When they found the body of George Custer, he had sowing owls stuck in his ears, so hopefully he would listen better in the next world. Ironically, Custer had protested their treatment to deaf ears in Washington, but went back on his own word to them. And for the record, Custer isn't even buried here. He's interned at West Point, so his men remain alone on this hilltop to this day. This is the memorial erected for the Native people who died at the Little Bighorn in 1999. The next day, a memorial for the slain Army's horses was revealed, but not for the dead Indian ponies. I'm going inside to tell you a few things about this battle you may not know. Contrary to popular belief, everyone in the 7th Cavalry was not killed at the Little Bighorn. The Indian scouts that Custer employed began singing their death songs and changing from their army uniforms into traditional Indian clothes. Custer discharged them on the spot. Many years later, the photographer of Indian life, Edward Curtis, met with these very same scouts, who revealed to him that Custer had seen Reno's company battling a superior force and could have gone to help those men, but he didn't. When Curtis told this to the President of the United States, he was instructed to keep his mouth shut to preserve the fantasy. It's similar to Hollywood's fairy tale war movies about places like the Ia Drang Valley, fake blood, and phony actors. Napoleon said, "History is only the agreed-upon lies of the victors." This is a quote from one of the markers inside the memorial from Bloody Knife. It reads, "I shall not see you, the sun, go down behind the mountains tonight. I'm going home today, not the way we came, but in spirit, home to my people." Many of the warriors cried, "La ambetu ki ewashte," as they went into battle, which means, "Today is a good day to die." But these men were not suicidal and had no death wish. They had simply come to understand that any man who feared death is never free. The breath we took is the past, the air we breathe is the present, and the breath we will take is the future. None of us know how much time we have or how many heartbeats we have been given, only if we've used them wisely or not in the end.
Peace comes within the souls of men when they realize their relationship, their oneness with the universe and all its powers. When they realize that at the center of the universe dwells Wankantanka, God, and this center is everywhere. It is within each of us. Black Elk, Ogallala.
As I said at the Little Bighorn, the past is always tied to the present, but our free will gives us the chance to make better choices, to free us of it. However, our future is also determined by fixed events, things that cannot be changed, that we must all experience as a group of people on Earth to learn something we cannot understand in any other way. This is the place where Sitting Bull had his precognisant vision of a victory at the Little Bighorn. His son, Jumping Bull, cut both his arms 50 times each. He then danced for 2 days without food, water, or sleep, finally collapsing to see the future. The spirits warned him, the Indians must not take the dead soldiers' possessions, or it would bring a great sorrow to all the tribes. But they did, causing the tragedy at Wounded Knee in 1890. Custer's own wife had dreamed of the tragedy, which he dismissed as just a dream. The men of the 7th Cavalry were dead from the day they signed up, fated to a fixed event in time. I saw parts of the 9/11 tragedy in my own dreams, but was never given a specific location or time for this event. Fixed events also bring great joy into the world, like the falling of the Berlin Wall. The world is a place of unending joy and pain, but to look at one and not the other is to see only half the truth of life. This knowing is Sitting Bull's gift of understanding to us all. Like the Greek philosopher Plato said, "The seeker of truth is a student of death."
We will be known forever by the tracks we leave behind. Lakota.
I've stopped at the grave of Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce, whose peaceful tribe was driven from their lands only to be stopped 40 miles from freedom in Canada in 1877. He said,
"I will warfare no more forever."
This was mistranslated to, I will fight no more forever. However, pacifists worldwide have echoed his words, but he also said this,
If I had known Colonel Miles might not return us to our land, I never would have stopped warfaring.
and the conflict continues between inner and outer man and holding on to truth. I'm at the entrance to Crazy Horse Memorial, under the arch with the sculpture's quote, "Never forget your dreams." Just up this road is the Visitors Center, where I will be donating a couple of art prints of Crazy Horse. This is Donovan Sprague, a Native University teacher and director of the Cultural Center here. It provides free table space for Native artisans to sell and also has Indian education programs. Donovan is a sincere and committed fellow, but he would not accept my prints. The good thing about life is that you never know how things will turn out. The bad thing about life is that you never know how things will turn out. Here I'm donating the art prints to Pat Dobbs, who is accepting them for Crazy Horse. Hopefully they will be put on permanent display so people can learn more about Tashutka Witko from his own words.
This world is made of shadows. Dreams take you beyond into the real world of spirit. Crazy Horse, Ogallala.
This is a sculpture of what the mountain will look like when it's completed. I'm going to be meeting with Fred Tully, a director here who I've known for 3 years. He's going to tell you the history of this project.
Well, this all began when Chief Henry Standing Bear took and had seen Mount Rushmore being carved, and he talked with his fellow chiefs and made the statement that they wanted the white man to know that the red men had great heroes also. Standing Bear wrote to Korchak and then went to West Hartford and visited with him and talked with him about the Native American and his plight and the need for something to be carved in the Black Hills. Korchak came out and visited Pine Ridge, and then they toured the Black Hills together to pick a site. There was a discussion about who should be depicted, and the decision was that it should be Crazy Horse. He had never been photographed, and this was to represent the North American Indian. And so it would have been better to not have an actual depiction of someone, but a representation of an individual and what he stood for to represent all North American Indians. Korchak went off to World War II, came back at the end of the war, and then moved out to South Dakota in 1947 and began the project here. In 1948, there was the first blast. From the beginning, Korchak, along with Standing Bear, agreed there should be no government funding of this project. It should be funded entirely with private money. Korchak said that this project should not be just about a statue, but it should be about education. He felt the ticket for the Native American out of the despair that they had was education. And so in carving the mountain, eventually that would create the revenue in order to support an educational institution. So the goal of Crazy Horse is to have a setting here where training can be had in terms of the medical field, college, to provide those things for Native Americans as a result of this gigantic sculpture. This will be the largest sculpture in the world. It's larger than the Egyptian pyramids and taller than the Washington Monument. Korchak had a sensitivity to the Native American, his suffering, I think coming probably from his own childhood and the suffering that he felt in terms of being without parents and being neglected. So he understood what the Native American was talking about. So that was a dream that he had And, um, and today we see the fruition of that dream 22 years after Korchak has died.
I'm heading up to the very top of this mountain. I'll be standing under the carved face of Crazy Horse, so you will be able to appreciate the scale of this project. We're getting higher up on the winding road to the top, and we're entering the restricted blast area. But you can begin to see the colossal size of this thing. Dreams are truly wings for the soul, and man is something other than what he appears to be. Right now I'm standing on what will be the arm of Crazy Horse, which is extended towards the direction of Pine Ridge and Wounded Knee, which is the last place we'll be going on the Spirits Trail. Art, a lot of it is self-indulgent garbage. And life ends up imitating bad art. But every once in a while, people share their dreams and their visions. And since all art is of perceived value, artists should give testimony, which is what's going on back here. Art is a little bit like a war. It's either dead or alive. Nothing's in between. If you do the work with love, it'll have soul. If you don't, it won't. That's about all I can say about this place. Thank you, Korchak. Crazy Horse is remembered as a great warrior, but he was also a Waka Wishasha, a medicine man. And he said this:
I came here for peace. No matter if my own relative pointed a gun at my head and ordered me to change that word, I would not change it. Crazy Horse, Ogallala.
When this mountain is finished, there will be a plaque on the side of it and a quote from Crazy Horse, which says, "My lands are where my dead lie buried." And that's where we are headed, to the people who danced with ghosts. I'm at Mount Rushmore. This is a monument that represents a lot of conflict, struggle, and contradiction. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson both stuck their heads in the hangman's noose to start this country, but both were slaveholders, and the democratic government they formed was ultimately only for white men. It didn't give freedom or rights to women, Indian people, or free black slaves. Washington freed his slaves when he died. Jefferson did not. Both men had illegal real estate investments in British-protected Indian lands that they exploited after the Revolutionary War. Teddy Roosevelt was a big supporter of conservation and preserving the environment and protecting the land stolen from the Indians. Abraham Lincoln had to undo what the two men in powdered wigs didn't by abolishing slavery. But that's not why the Civil War was fought. It was rather to hold the Union of States together as one country. However, by the war's end, it had become such an embarrassment he had to free them. But Lincoln's original idea was very different, which was to ask all the blacks to simply leave and start a country of their own somewhere else. After the war, many blacks in the North still had no right to vote, and some whites in the South lost their right to vote, while the freed slaves' Civil Rights Bill would eventually be struck down by the Supreme Court 10 years later, again legalizing segregation of the races. The week Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, he also okayed the largest mass execution in U.S. history, the hanging of 38 Indians involved in a Sioux uprising. Later, one executed man was found to have been innocent. He commuted the sentences of the remaining 300. The artist who sculpted this, Gutzon Borglum, was a Ku Klux Klansman who worked on the Stone Mountain Memorial to the Confederate Army till he was fired, yet he also aided Indians during the Great Depression. He began working on Rushmore in 1927. He died in 1941. His son finished it later that year, but it's incomplete. The original design had full torsos for all the figures, not just faces. So again, it reflects things still undone in America. One of the reasons it took Borglum so long to do this was that people praised the work, but no one really wanted to pay for it, and the government sort of works the same way. In a democracy, you have to participate in it. Otherwise, the government stops serving the people and serves only itself. People will tell you freedom isn't free, but you don't fight and die for nothing either. Yet, the United States government only pays its war veterans half the money they are eligible for, forcing us to choose between disabilities and pensions. And President Reagan made all veterans begin co-payment for the free medical care guaranteed them for their service, so vets ended up paying for the privilege of being shot at. There's a lot of blood on this mountain, and people should think about the real cost of freedom when they come here. The first Native American woman soldier ever killed in a war was in Iraq, Lori Pai Stiwa, a single mom who said, "I just want to get through this crap and go home." But Homeland Security really ended for Indians with Christopher Columbus in 1492. America entered the Vietnam War over the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which never happened, and got trapped in a civil war there. America searched for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that never existed, again trapped in another civil war. All ghosts of the Little Bighorn. Spirit's Trail is always a revealing road. I'm traveling through the sacred Black Hills, stolen from the Lakota in the 1800s. This is something called Sitting Bull's Crystal Caverns. He doesn't look like Sitting Bull, but whoever he is seems to be happy that people are going down in the ground to look at some rocks. But I fail to see how it benefits the Lakota. So what do Indians really look like? And who are they? In the past, the advertising media has shown us that Native people appear like this. They want to sell us things at bargain price, like flour and eggs, even their land. Here they are selling us some cigarettes, but now they seem to look more like a sexy white woman. Surely this indifference and distortion of a people's culture and identity is a thing of the past. Not quite. This gun manufacturer thinks calling Indians savages will help sales. No comment. This newspaper cartoon appeared a month before the 1890 Wounded Knee Massacre, showing Indians as freaks with big noses and huge eyes, red devils afraid to be photographed. This is the mascot of the Cleveland Indians baseball team. This bug-eyed, buck-toothed, blood-red cartoon doesn't look like any Native people I know. Almost 90% of the Indian college students drop out in their first year. They break the cycle of poverty only to have their hearts broken by images like this. Makes you wonder what the hell the management of the Cleveland Indians can be thinking about in the 21st century. Here's a nice logo on a clock, but it says Redskins. It's amazing that a professional football team like the Washington Redskins can get away with this name. The Patent and Trademark Office ruled Redskins to be a racial slur and canceled the trademark in 1998, but the team has appealed, arguing it's a tradition. It was once a tradition for white people to pay $25 for an Indian scalp. The most prized were the ones of children with ears on them. Give scalping tickets a whole new meaning. Finally, there's the United States government, who minted coins with the image of Native people on them to sell what they had stolen from the home of the brave. I'm at the foothills of the Pahasapa, the sacred Black Hills of the Lakota, their spiritual center, the place where they came to talk with God. The white men who came to this land thought they could turn it into something greater. The result? Hey, boo-boo. They don't make the time we live in watches. The distance we travel measures our age, not calendars. Clouds are like the Great Spirit's timeless mystery, always changing, yet always the same. The most revolutionary thing a person can do is to be happy and dream. Beyond the dance of life and death lies a deeper truth that the Cheyenne mystic Fire Dog spoke of.
We are part fire and part dream. Fire Dog, Cheyenne.
Dreams are greater than knowledge because they are infinite, and magic is everywhere. I found this by my campsite. It's not carved. The tree's bark's natural pattern created this Indian crow's image. If it hasn't for you, I'll eat crow. I'm leaving the lush grasslands of the Black Hills. Now I'm traveling through the Badlands. on my way to Pine Ridge Reservation. It's an eerily beautiful moonscape on one hand. On the other hand, it's a barren place, absent of any life and growth, part of the land set aside for the Lakota people to prosper in by the government. This is Highway 18 into Pine Ridge. On most weekend nights, you can hear ambulances screaming up and down it, carrying people who have OD'd or victims of violence, and the walking wounded who fell under the weight of just trying to live here. On my first day, someone tried to sell me dope. Later, I saw a family smoking crack while their children sat in their car's back seat watching. I'm a man who is both ahead of and behind his times. They say patience is a virtue, but weight broke the wagon. If I had any say over Judgment Day, I'd give Jesus the day off and let the Lakota go to the head of the line into heaven, because they've definitely spent their time in hell. This is the kind of housing people lived in until the late 1970s here, with no indoor plumbing or electricity on mostly dirt floors. This is the hospital at Pine Ridge, a modern state-of-the-art facility. And here's a nice youth center and skate park. But most of Pine Ridge looks like this in the 21st century, run-down neighborhoods with boarded-up houses. They tried clustered housing in very remote areas, but these projects only created Plains ghettos. I shot this film earlier at Crow Agency in Montana. There's very little difference between the two places. The Crows sided with the United States government, fighting with it against their long-standing enemy, the Lakota, reasoning they would be rewarded and have an improved life, but things didn't turn out that way.